Good morning. It's Thursday again. Welcome to Voluntary Virtues. This is your half hour with me, Kelly Diamond, and the conversation. I'm doing a part 2 series on immigration with the I am in parentheses, of course, because it's just migration. I was going to go on a larger tangent about national sovereignty, but after a week-long discussion with various border humpers, I think I've come up with a whole new list of reasons why people should not be allowed to move. So we must address them. And by we, I mean me. Um, Again, this will probably escalate because this thing really just gets my blood boiling. This issue is just, and I don't know why. I mean, I was born here. I've never had to go through an immigration process. But as a citizen, I see how unfree we really are. And I don't want that on anybody. But to see how much worse my country treats others as they're trying to come in, that just breaks my heart. I mean, it's bad enough you have the government doing the things that it's doing to its citizens, but then to extend it even more so and compound that to people who don't have a membership, it's a little bit, to me, that just upsets me, and I don't like it. But I don't like the state as a general rule. So whoever's government, I don't like it. So you can tell me to leave, and I already don't like the government you're sending me to, and I don't even care which one you pick. So in any case, so the first one I heard was that the immigrants are bringing in diseases. Now I understand generally how disease works. That's the contagious diseases work. They're looking for a host, and they'll jump onto whichever one is most amenable to keeping it going and whatnot. Okay, I get it. I no more want to catch a cold from somebody than I do want to catch tuberculosis. Okay, so I get that. The problem is that the only organism, the only clump of cells that knows what a border is human. So germs don't know that there's this special line you're not supposed to cross. So it could very well jump onto a deer, or it could jump onto a migrating bird, but it doesn't know that it's crossing a border. Okay? I don't think it knows anything really, but it certainly isn't cognizant of borders. So germs are going to come and go regardless of who its host is. It might very well jump onto an animal. It could jump onto a human. And what's more is it doesn't know the legal status of its host. So in addition to not being particularly cognizant of borders, it's not particularly cognizant of the legal status of its host, which means that it could jump on to somebody who's just visiting relatives or traveling or going on their honeymoon. It doesn't matter to the germ or the disease. So I don't think tuberculosis has evolved to a place where it first evaluates its host and says, well, are your intentions legal or illegal? Do you have a passport? Are you just going on a visitor's visa? Because tuberculosis doesn't set in and malaria doesn't set in until you've been here beyond your visa. So if you've got a 90-day visa to be here, all the diseases of this country will leave you alone until such time as you're here illegally, right? Or maybe all the diseases will compile on you, but then as you show your papers at the U.S. border, they jump off. I mean, I don't understand. Is this the silver bullet to disease? Now, I'm all for hygiene, and I'm all for trying to keep yourself as healthy as possible. Build your immune system and do whatever you feel as an individual is necessary to keep yourself safe. If that means that you have to live in a biodome to accomplish that end, and that's where your hypochondria has taken you, then, I mean, God bless, if that's what you want. What I don't want is for the entire United States to become a biodome, which I don't think it will be. It can't even build a wall. We can't even build 3 miles of freaking wall, much less a biodome. So you're not going to keep disease out unless you want, like, North Korea on steroids. Nobody in, nobody out, and everybody who sneezes is in quarantine. Okay? That's how you're going to keep yourself from not getting diseases. And that's how you're going to keep diseases from ever crossing the border. And that is, nobody crosses the border. And that includes Americans leaving. Because if you leave, you contaminate yourself. You leave the quarantine area of the United States, and then you come back in, you could be bringing something, and we're going to have to delouse you in the corner every time you cross a border. It just doesn't work that way. It's not going to work that way. So disease is coming and going regardless of the legal status of its host. Okay, a man going on a business trip to China for a month, or a woman going on a little tour of Europe with her friends, it really doesn't matter. When they come back, they could very well have something, and you never know. All right, and that has nothing to do with their legal status. It has everything to do with the nature of disease. And human beings have outlived a lot of shit. So I'm pretty sure that, I mean, as a human race, we're going to outlive all the shit. Okay? We'll sooner destroy ourselves fighting over this stuff than any disease will ever take us down. So I'm not concerned about disease as much as I am concerned about human behavior, because that seems to be the most dangerous thing out there right now for a human existence and the greatest threat to it. The other point that was brought up was that we're allowing gangs in. Now, I don't like violent collectives. As a general rule, I don't. Okay? I don't like violence. So I don't like it from an individual, and I don't like it from a group of people. So violence is violence, and I don't like it. I disapprove. Okay? I so disapprove that I would prefer people didn't do it. And I believe that in a free society, it's an unsustainable lifestyle choice. Okay? Because in a free society, ostensibly everybody could be armed, and their means of defending themselves doesn't get brought into question. So it's not very sustainable, because at some point, violence will beget violence, and you will be met with the end of a gun, at the end of somebody else's barrel, and it doesn't go very far. So, I mean, peace is just, if nothing else, a pragmatic lifestyle choice in a free society. Okay? But we're bringing in gang members. I don't think people understand. People who say that don't understand how gangs work. Now, I'm not a big advocate of violent gangs. Okay? I'm not an advocate at all of violent gangs. So much so that I oppose the existing state-sponsored gang known as the Blue Line Gang, or perhaps better known to the average person as cops. They have their colors. They go around extorting people. They're very violent. And they're literally violent for profit. They are trying to generate revenue through their violence. I mean, this is how horrible they are. But that's the gang we have here now. Okay? And how do they work? How does that gang work? That gang doesn't work by importing people. That gang works so long as women are fertile and popping out babies, and advertising is legal. Okay? It's called recruiting. They recruit. Just like our international gang recruits. Our military. They recruit. And you seem to think that private gangs are different? No, they're not. They're not different. They recruit. So because when I was growing up, okay, I went to an East Los Angeles school, and the most prominent gangs that I knew of were White Fence and Brick City. Okay? And my understanding was that they extended as far south as Central America. Okay? With their greatest numbers being in Latin America, but with a significant presence in the United States. Okay? They weren't trying to bring more people in. That was not their deal. The deal was to recruit who's already here. So we're going to take people who were once not a member of a gang and bring them into our gang. Entice them with a feeling of camaraderie and brotherhood and and potentially profit, protection, safety, all the things. But that's no different than what the mafia promises. That's no different than what the military promises. You'll notice that people call one another brothers and sisters inside the military, because they have created this camaraderie, this family unit. And so that's what gangs do, though. I mean, gangs are gangs. That's the nature of gangs. It doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter if you go to Japan and deal with the Yakuza. It doesn't matter if you're in China and you've got the triad. These are all gangs, okay? And their behavior, in terms of the details and the variables, that might differ, but in terms of their organization, they're the same. They operate exactly the same way. They recruit. They don't import. It makes no sense. That's too expensive. That's too impractical. There's too much risk involved. I'm not saying that gang members aren't trying to cross the border. I'm saying that that's not the MO of any given gang. Any of these gangs that are pervasive and extend all the way down to Central America, their MO is not to just concentrate all of them into the United States. Think of it in terms of a business. It's still social organization. The fact that the gang's motive is more violent doesn't change the fact that social organization is what it is. Businesses don't take everybody from their LA location and then move them all to the Dallas location. No, they go hire people in Dallas. They recruit. So that's how gangs work, okay? So importing your gang members, the numbers aren't there. I'm not saying they don't exist. I'm saying that that's not the MO of any given gang. It just doesn't. It's as irrational as fearing the brown people themselves. Okay, this is how irrational it is, because sociologically it makes no sense, economically it makes no sense, and organizationally it makes no sense. That's not how any other gang operates. So to say that you're going to project this fear about gang members coming in and that we're bringing in all of their criminal element, no. The criminal element has to extend that far. They can't let go of their Honduras location. Their Honduras branch is integral to connecting the U.S. to South America. So the reality is that, you have people who are coming from Honduras. You might have one or two of them coming up here. You might have a smattering of them coming up here, but you're not going to have huge droves of them coming up here. The droves are going to be created in their new LA branch, in their new U.S. branch. They're going to recruit. So if you want to protect yourself from gang violence, you need to educate your children. Okay? That's how you're going to protect them from gang violence. And that includes joining the police force. Now, I find it to be rather disingenuous to tell me that you're against gang violence while telling me that you support our troops and you support the cops. If you support police officers and you support the military, then you have no right to bitch about gang violence at all, because they are gang violence. That's all they do. That is exactly what they are. They're state-sponsored, and you pay for them with your tax dollars. So please don't tell me you don't want to pay for that brown gang member. I don't want to pay for any. Okay? I don't care if you are part of a gang or you're not. I don't want anything to do with it. But I certainly don't want to hear the hypocrisy of saying, well, I support my troops and I think we should pay for their medical care and I think we should pay for their 3 squares a day instead of 2, and I think the cops, they put their lives on the line, and tell me all this wonderful shit about how these gangs work, all the while decrying these gang members from coming in when we don't even know for a fact that that's who they really are. Again, with the presumption of guilt from last episode, right? That I'm presuming that you're here to perpetrate violence. Well, let me tell you something else about gangs, okay? Gangs, as we know them, the criminal gang, thrive in black markets. It's hard to have this thriving gang when there is nothing illegal, because then everybody can do it. So, right now we have a lovely drug war going on, because God knows if people started deciding on what they could put into their bodies, what could possibly happen? I would be dealing with high people instead of drunk people on the subway. Oh, we already do. I don't have a fear of somebody getting high. I have a fear of somebody who wants to get high, can't get their fix, and is losing their shit in a bodega to get some money so that they can go buy some more stuff. Okay? And so they can afford the premium on that stuff, because that stuff is not usually that expensive. It's cheap. There isn't much to it, especially weed. Weed is weed. It's a damn weed. It wants to grow. Now, does it take some care? Sure, it takes some care. But in the end, it's not as expensive as the street value. Okay, but that we do this. We have created these black markets, which is a lovely environment for criminal elements, including gangs or lone wolves, to operate. If you don't want gangs, quit with the drug war, end the prohibition on guns and the regulations on guns, legalize prostitution, legalize gambling. That's it. Get rid of that. Your gang activity will dramatically reduce. No joke. These are the people who have realized that there is an ROI involved, that there's a profit margin, that there's a benefit to be had by participating in a market where there's still demand, but it's not legal to transact. And these prohibitive wars that we have, these moral wars that we have on crime, okay, criminalizing things that aren't inherently criminal or violent, creates the violence. It begets the violence, and then you get the drug war, which involves two gangs. You've got the private sector gang who wants to sell their heroin, and then you've got the blue line gang who wants to stop you from selling heroin. Often, because I'm the cynic, often to steal your evidence so that they can then sell the heroin, right? It becomes a turf war. Now imagine, for a moment, if drugs were legal. You're not going to have a bunch of people shooting up toxins anymore. You can get the pure stuff. And pure heroin is, I mean, and I'm not trying to sell it because I don't do any of this stuff. And I don't advocate that you do start a habit. I'm just saying that in terms of what's safer, it's safer to use pure heroin than it is to go use something like meth, and or something that's laced, and having access to needles that are clean as opposed to using and sharing dirty ones. That's just hygiene. And then you're worried about the spread of disease. If you're, or this goes back to your disease argument, right? Disease spreads where there isn't good hygiene practices and cleanliness. And so if you're saying that you don't want these diseases to spread, then don't compel the Americans that are already here to share needles. Let them just openly use. Quit fighting. Quit introducing violence where there was none. But you don't like the gang violence and you don't want the diseases, but you're creating an environment that invites it all. That makes no sense. Get rid of the black market. Have everything above the line. Take them out of the shadows. That's the same thing I say about racists. I don't want to suppress your speech. I want to know who the assholes are. Let them talk out loud. Let them decide how they want to run their businesses way out in the open. Don't censor them. Don't force them to do anything. Just let them speak out. I want them to advertise their bigotry so I know who they are. Then I don't give them my business. I don't want to support their business. I don't want to give them money. I don't want them to stay in business. But forcing them to do one thing or another for any particular group forces them to stay in business. And then you have this spiteful relationship between customer and purveyor. No, I want people to just be voluntarily out there doing their thing. And then I'll decide, I'll evaluate you morally, ethically, financially. I'll evaluate you and see as a consumer whether or not I want anything to do with you. The same goes for any black market activity. I would prefer to have people competing selling guns. People will get better prices. People will have more choice. People will have more options and more and different businessmen to deal with. So if they don't like Hal who's selling their gun, they can go to Ed. I mean, why not? And if you're worried about gangs coming in, then get your ass a gun and protect yourself, protect your family. But we have all of these different black markets, which calls for violence. That's what black markets are. You have somebody who's willing to go through, take the risk, and sell at a premium to fill a demand in the market. And then there's no legal recourse, so then everything is handled through violence. Prices are the price gouging. If you think it's price gouging now in the open market, imagine how it is in the black market. So there's price gouging. People can't afford it anymore, but they still want. So they're going through criminal lengths just to get what they want. It's a horrible cycle. If you don't want gang violence, legal or otherwise, I mean, I don't understand why we would care whether or not we have gangs here whose citizenship status is legal if they're engaging in all this other criminal and violent activity. Now, if I had to choose which laws somebody broke, I would prefer that they broke the non-violent laws as opposed to the violent ones. I would rather have somebody go smoke some weed illegally, be here with no papers, and have a broken taillight. I want that guy. What I don't want is the child molester. What I don't want is rapists and murderers. So you're sitting there picking and choosing which laws you want people to abide by, and this is the stickler. Do they have their papers? Well, at least he's an American gang member. Is that some sort of moral high ground we've got going on now, where our standards for freedom are degenerated to a point where we can now make a qualitative distinction between our gang members? That's ridiculous. Again, it becomes so preposterous that people fear the disease, people fear the gang members, and yet they never once consider what the sociological factors are in fostering such things. And that there are things that can be done that have nothing to do with guarding the border. But to tell me you're against gangs while advocating that we send a gang to the border to inhibit people from free travel, you need to suppress your inner tyrant. That's outrageous that anybody would want to do that to anybody else over the assumption that they're here to spread disease, steal our welfare, steal our jobs, bring their gangs. And we impose this on the brown immigrants, not on the white ones, because when people were lined up in droves at Ellis Island, and I assure you that the majority of people who are advocating for border control now are descendants of those people. Okay? But when the Irish and the Russians and the Italians were coming into Ellis Island, and all they had to do was get a quick health scan and some papers at the gate, that was the legal process. Why has our process evolved to the point where it's virtually impossible for anybody to get in? And it's specifically geared to our southern border. I mean, personally, I want to stand out there in great protest and say, dude, you've been sold a bill of goods, turn around and go home. You're better off down there, I promise you. But they want in. You know, the same way I've been telling homosexuals, don't get married, it's not worth it. You don't need a permission slip from the state. Run while you still can. No, we want this. Okay, well, if you want it, you want it. I'm not here to stop you. I'm not going to stand in your way. I don't want to stand in the way of gays getting married. I want to stand in the way of Mexicans coming across our border, or Hondurans crossing our border, for that matter. If this is where you want to be, then this is where you want to be. Set your roots here. But the idea that we wave our flag as if there's some sort of pride, or that there's some sort of, like, as if it was some sort of accomplishment to be born here. It wasn't. If you were born here, you had an anchor mom that got you here. It was absolutely by no action or merit on your part that you were born here. That is entirely your mom's call. And if your mom was an American citizen and she gave birth to you here, then you had an anchor mom that made you a citizen. Now imagine if everybody who was born here, naturally born here, at the age of 18 had to wait in the same line. Fine, you belong with your mom. Your mom is here legally. So you get to stay with your mom, but at 18, you're an adult. So now, get your ass in line. No cutsies. You got 5 years of waiting. In the meantime, we need you to pay this money. Now imagine if Americans were asked to do that at 18. Yeah, it's fine. You were here as a kid. But you didn't go through the process. You need to go through a process. Just like everybody else. We need to process everybody. Up until 18, you stay with your mom. Your mom's an American. That's fine. So you're anchored here by your mom. Okay. Who went through the proper channels to be a legit, legal American. But you haven't yet. You just got born. Which, what's that? You didn't sign any papers. You didn't do anything. And that way, if everybody had to get in line, then you could show me this social contract. This ever-elusive social contract I've apparently signed by virtue of being born here. Right? That solves a lot of problems for a lot of people. But I find this fear of gangs, of disease, welfare, it's all misguided and misdirected. When you whittle it down, the problem has nothing to do with the border. It usually boils down to the fact that these are Latin Americans as opposed to European Americans. It usually boils down to the fact that people are just so tribalistic and so nationalistic that they don't want other people in their club. They got theirs. And they keep saying, yeah, you can go through these proper channels. They have no idea what those channels entail. Some of them do. Some people do. But why? What does that process serve? You want them to go through a naturalization process to memorize a bunch of shit that's, for the most part, not true, right? And that the average American doesn't even know, because the average American's too damn uneducated to even know anything about their own American history. But we're going to put it on the immigrant to know more about American history than Americans. And then, when you've done all that studying, and you can answer these questions, and you can pass a test, and recite this pledge to a piece of cloth, why? Why all this? Just to move. Now, I was told that homogeneity is what will make things more cohesive, and that by intermingling all the different philosophies and cultures, that's where you get these wars and where you get the violence. And that's not true. That's not true. We're all different. Each and every one of us. I have nothing culturally in common with the average American. But I'm not out there shooting them up over it either. Differences don't inherently drive you to violence. It's a desire to take. It's that inner tyrant that says, I want to make you do something. I'm going to make you do X, Y, and Z. I want to compel you to behave a certain way. Or I'm going to nitpick the shit out of your car to see if it's got a broken taillight or if the brakes work. It's a controlling thing. That's what violence is. Violence has to do with control. It has nothing to do with how we resolve our differences. We can do things more peacefully. And we don't have to be bigots about it. I really think that people need to stick to the property that's theirs, mind their own business, clean their own house, worry about their own shit, and worry about their individual economies, rather than complaining about other people trying to take care of their own business. I've been told enough times, if you don't like it, leave. Well, somebody else took that advice from their country. They left. They came here. And they're bringing their ethic with them, for better or for worse. And immigration is not some new phenomenon. It's completely natural. It is a natural phenomenon that every living creature has a right to, and does, except for us. If you really believed in freedom, then let people travel freely, and quit putting all the shackles on them and advocating for more of them, out of these phobias that make no sense and have no basis in fact and aren't statistically supported. One media article does not an epidemic make. Okay, so Thanks once again for joining me. I will catch you again next week. Have a great one. Bye.